For this project, I decided to make a supernatural psychological thriller short film. It's based around one character who's being chased by a supernatural creature, but it is hinted that the creature is just in his head. My target audience for this film is 18 to 35-year-olds and fans of psychological thriller films. Some of my influences for the film include films such as Taxi Driver and Black Swan. These films are based around mental instability and playing with reality, which are big themes in my film. I took inspiration from the style of the films, especially the parts of Black Swan where Nina starts hallucinating. I also took influence from films that explore the supernatural, such as The Exorcist and Final Destination. These films both play with unexplained occurrences, which is another theme in my film. For this film, I wanted to show a range of skill when creating digital effects. Because of this, I wanted to include some more subtle but some more obvious effects in my film. I do not think that visual effects have to all be obvious and in your face, and some of them can just add to the environment of the scene to help build the atmosphere of the film. The first effect in my film is the titles. I brought the titles in using scatter eyes. I like the look of this effect, and it brings the titles in quickly. To bring the titles out, I used a glitch effect. I create this by taking stock glitch footage and using a displacement map to put it on the text. This effect works well in my film because the same glitch effect is used later on for the figure, as its way of coming in and out of a scene. I think putting the same effect on the title works well as it links the film together as a whole. I decided to use a song over the film instead of using sound effects because I think it fits the film well. I tried adding sound effects throughout to accompany the song, but there would be too many sound effects that needed to be added. When I tried it, the sound sounded too cluttered and distracting. I decided to add sound effects to the title to demonstrate some skill of sound design rather than just putting the song over the film. The close-up of man smoking in the scene is influenced by a shot in Fight Club, the slow-mo of Marla smoking in a support group. I wanted to recreate this shot because I liked the look of it, and I thought it would be a challenge for me. I created the slow-mo effect in Premiere Pro during the editing stage. I tried to add more smoke to the shot in After Effects using Particle Playground. However, it looked unrealistic and it did not merge well with the original smoke in the shot. I think this effect looks okay overall, but it's not as effective as the shot is in Fight Club. I think the effect would look better if I managed to bulk out the smoke a bit more. One challenging thing with scene 1 was the colour grade. I filmed it in the evening, so the lighting changes were quite significant as I filmed the scene. I had to work hard on the colour grade to make the lighting change not too significant. I also added an orange tint on the scene to try and replicate a sunset. To create the transitions in between the scenes, I put all the scenes on a master composition and used the opacity to create a fade effect. I think this effect works well to transition from scene to scene, but the effect is quite simplistic, and I could have challenged myself a bit more by using a more complex transition. My first effect in scene 2 is one of the more subtle effects I have used in my film. I added a bin bag next to the bin in the background of the shot. This is quite unnoticeable and not very attention grabbing, but I think it adds to the environment, making the alleyway darker and dingier. Adding this effect is more complex than I first thought, as I had to mask around my actor as he runs past where the bin bag is. I think this effect worked well in adding to the setting of the scene. To create the streetlight flicker, I put the shot in 3D space and added some lights. I manipulated the brightness of the light to create the flickering effect. I think this effect looks good, but I found it quite difficult to get it to look natural, and I had to spend quite a bit of time getting it to look right, making it quite time consuming. For the figure, I used a stock image from Google and put it into Photoshop to make it look darker and give it red eyes to make it look more menacing and supernatural looking. For it coming in and out of the scene, I used the same glitch effect that I used in the titles at the start. I also moved the figure up and down in the scene in order to make it look more realistic. To add to the realism, I could have added a shadow underneath the figure, as this would have made it look more 3D and like it was in the scene. However, I did not think this was too important because it is a supernatural creature, so not having a shadow beneath it would not be too strange. Overall, I think the figure looks good in the scene. In scene 2, I used the colour grade to improve the look. It was dark when I filmed, so I had to brighten up the scene without the image looking unnatural or grainy. I also used masks to make the actor stand out, as a lot of colours in the scene blended together. Additionally, I accentuated the blacks on the man and the figure. I did this throughout the film to make them stand out in the scene. I did not use many new effects in scene 3, the only effect I put in was the figure. However, it took longer to do in this scene as it came on off screen a lot more often than in scene 2. I think I could have improved on the movement of the figure in this scene. It seemed to stop and start a lot when it should have been one smooth motion. This is very obvious in the scene as the figure was much bigger and much more attention grabbing in scene 2. My biggest effect in my film was the shot of the city skyline in scene 4, and it definitely took me the most time to get right. This shot was influenced by the final shot in Fight Club of Tyler and Marla, where all the buildings get blown up. I wanted to recreate this shot because it's visually striking and Fincher used the digital effects to create it when making Fight Club. To create the skyline I had to cut out the background from a still using Photoshop. I then put the shot into a 3D environment to build up images to create the skyline. I then had to mask around my actor to put him in the scene. This is very time consuming and difficult to get right. I could have used a green screen to make this process easier rather than having to mask around the actor. I used the glitch effect I used earlier on not just on the figure, but also on the actor. This was easy to do as both the figure and the actor were on separate layers in the composition. I think the shot I created is similar to Fight Club, but I could have made the actor look more silhouetted. I think the mask is quite distracting in this scene, and it might have looked better if I tried to use a green screen instead. I have learnt a lot in the process of making this film. I found out that subtle effects are just as effective as the more obvious in-your-face effects. They can help build up an environment which can help add to the style and the feel of a scene. Another thing I've learnt is the importance of colour grading. Colour grading can drastically change your shots. It can help make your subject stand out and manipulate where you want the audience to look in the shot.